Namaste and Siddhi Pranam. Welcome to your today's topic, which is physiology of stress and its relevance during pregnancy. So let's look into understanding the various physiological impact of stress during pregnancy. So the physiology of stress during pregnancy is an important area of study that unravels the integrate interplay between the expected mother's physiological responses and the developing fetus. So pregnancy is a very transformative journey, as we all know, and it is accompanied by various physiological changes to support the growth and development of the baby. However, it's also a time when women may encounter various stressors that can profoundly influence her well-being and potentially impact the health of the unborn child. So understanding the physiological mechanism underlying stress during pregnancy is essential for really comprehending its implications, as well as formulating the effective strategies to promote maternal and baby's health. At the core of stress physiology lies the body's integrated stress response system. So in the context of pregnancy, this stress response undergoes adaptation to accommodate the unique demands of gestation. So physiology of stress during pregnancy encompasses not only of the maternal responses, but also the interaction between the mother and the developing baby. So maternal stress responses or stress hormone can traverse the placenta and can be transferred to the placenta and directly impact the baby's physiology as well. And this phenomena is also known as transplacental transmission, which we have discussed in the earlier chapter. And this highlights the potential influence of maternal stress on the developing baby's well-being. Moreover, the stress-related hormonal imbalances can also disrupt the delicate equilibrium necessary for optimal fetal development as well as the placental function. So these effects can have a long-term implication both for mother as well as for the baby's health in the future, which contributes to the emerging concept of fetal programming. So by understanding the physiological underpinnings of stress, people can really implement appropriate stress management techniques tailored to the unique needs of the pregnant mother. And these management approaches can include lifestyle modifications, psychological support, using complementary therapy like yoga, meditation, breathing, mindfulness practices, and interacting with beautiful environment like being more in nature, etc., to promote the maternal well-being and foster a very healthy intrauterine environment for the baby also. So we are actually going to go deep into understanding the physiology of stress during this chapter. And with the better knowledge of physiology of stress during pregnancy, we can actually pave a way to improve stress management strategies that prioritize the well-being of the mother and the baby. Now, we are going to discuss the impact of stress on the various organs and the functionalities of the body. And this will really deepen your understanding on the ripple effect of stress on the entire body, not just of the mother, but also of the baby. Now, so coming on to the physiological responses and the hormonal changes. So the stress response is a very complex physiological mechanism that enables the human body to respond and cope with the challenging situation. So first is the hypothalamus activation. So the stress response begins with the activation of hypothalamus, which is a gland in our brain, and it's a small region at the base of the brain responsible for regulating numerous of bodily function. And when the brain perceives a potential threat or a stressor, the hypothalamus initiates the stress response by releasing CRH, which is corticotropin releasing hormone. So CRH is released into the bloodstream and it travels to the pituitary gland, which further triggers a cascade of events that amplifies the stress response. Next would be the pituitary gland response, as we just discussed. So the pituitary gland, often which is referred as master gland in our brain, plays a very critical role in coordinating with the body's hormonal responses, and it responds to the CRH release by the hypothalamus by secreting ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic hormone. So ACTH further travels through the bloodstream to the adrenal glands, which are located on the top of the kidneys. So the release of ACTH stimulates the adrenal glands to produce and release stress hormones like glucocorticoids, with cortisol being the primary stress hormones. Now further, when from the process of hypothalamus to pituitary, all of them triggering responses, further it triggers the responses in our adrenal gland, that means into our kidneys. Then what does adrenal gland do is that adrenal glands, which are responsible for production and release of stress hormones, and they play a vital role in the body's response to stress. So when ACHT reaches the adrenal glands from after the trigger of pituitary gland, it then promotes the secretion of cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So cortisol synthesis occurs within the adrenal cortex and the outer layer of the adrenal gland, and it involves a series of enzymatic reactions that converts cholesterol into cortisol. So regulation of cortisol release is very crucial. Cortisol secretion is regulated by the negative loop. As cortisol levels rise in response to stress in our body, it inhibits the release of CRH from hypothalamus and then ACTH from pituitary gland, and this feedback loop helps maintain cortisol levels within the normal range. So that's why it's important that the normal range of cortisols is maintained, and hence the functioning of all these glands are taken care. Hence, the functioning of these glands only disrupt when the level of stress goes beyond control, and hence that impacts different aspects of mother's health and the baby's health, as we discussed in the previous chapter. Now, coming on to the fight and flight response. So the fight or flight response is one of the physiological reactions that occurs in response to stress. So when a stressor is detected, the brain's amygdala sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus, which then activates the sympathetic nervous system. And this activation triggers a series of physiological changes designed to provide the body with an immediate burst of energy and heightened focus. So the sympathetic nervous system stimulates the release of stress hormones, including the cortisol and the adrenal, from the adrenal glands. So cortisol, often referred as the stress hormones, helps to mobilize energy that is stored by increasing blood sugar levels. So it also suppresses non-essential functions like digestion and reproductive processes temporarily. And adrenal, which is also known as epinephrine, rapidly increases the heart rate and blood pressure as well as the breathing rate. Then it prepares the body for physical exertion. So during pregnancy, the fight or flight response can have very specific implications. Chronic stress or repeated activation of stress response can lead to prolonged exposure to stress hormone, potentially impacting the developing fetus. And high level of cortisol in the mother's bloodstream can affect baby's development and increase risk of preterm labor, other developmental issues in the baby. Now, let's look into the stress-induced cardiovascular changes. So the changes during pregnancy, the cardiovascular system experiences distinct adaptations to support the developing fetus, while stress can exert a notable influence on this system. So and this affects the heart rate and the blood pressure and overall cardiovascular activities of the mother. However, excessive stress can disrupt these adaptations and increase the risk of complications like increased heart rate and increased blood pressure, and also vasoconstriction, and then it further have implications on the cardiovascular health. So first is the increased heart rate and blood pressure. So what it does, so stress triggers the stress hormones, and adrenals and noradrenal, which stimulates the sympathetic nervous system, are released. This activation then further leads to increase in heart rate and blood pressure. Now, then increased heart rate and blood pressure has various consequences in itself, as you understand. Now let's look at the cardiovascular response here. So the body perceives stress as a threat, causing the heart to pump more and more blood to deliver oxygen and nutrients to the vital organs and muscles. And this increased workload on the heart results in higher heart rate and elevated blood pressure, and then further leads to pregnancy complications. So excessive and prolonged elevation to heart rate and blood pressure can be very problematic during pregnancy, because it increases the risk of conditions like preeclampsia, gestational hypertension, preterm labor, etc. So now next is vasoconstriction. So stress-induced vasoconstrictions referred to as narrowing of blood vessels, particularly in the peripheral areas of the body. So this constriction occurs as a response to stress hormones, which leads to reduced blood flow to the non-essential areas. So what does restrictive blood flow does? So during stress, the blood is redirected to vital organs and muscle, and to the vital organs as well as the muscles to prioritize the body's fight and flight response. So as a result, blood vessels in the extremes, including the hands and feet, may constrict, leading to the cold hands and feet. And it has further implications in the pregnancy. So vasoconstrictions can restrict the blood flow to the placenta, affecting the oxygen and nutrient delivery to the baby. And insufficient blood flow to the placenta can increase the risk of fetal growth restriction, as well as further leads to developmental complications for the baby, as the blood flow stays focused in the vital organs and does not reach the other important organs, because the body is getting ready to fight and it's not focused on nurturing itself. It's getting ready to deal with the threat. Now, looking at the impact on the cardiovascular health. So chronic stress and its impact on the cardiovascular system can have long-term implications for maternal cardiovascular health during and as well as after pregnancy. So first is hypertension. So prolonged elevation of blood pressure due to chronic stress contributes to the development of hypertension or worsen pre-existing hypertension for the mothers. And hypertensive disorders during pregnancy, such as preeclampsia, poses a risk to both mother and the baby. It can even lead to death at times. So further, what it can lead to is cardiovascular disease. So chronic stress contributes to the development and progression of cardiovascular diseases like coronary artery diseases and heart failure. So women who experience significant stress during pregnancy may have increased risk of cardiovascular disease later in life also. Now looking at the impact on the emotional well-being. So stress and anxiety during pregnancy can negatively impact emotional well-being of the mother, which in turn can affect the cardiovascular health. So emotional distress may lead to unhealthy coping behavior and further increasing the cardiovascular risks. So looking at the immune dysfunction here caused by stress, which can have a significant impact on the pregnancy. So stress hormones like cortisol can suppress the immune system, making the mother more susceptible to infection and illnesses. And this can increase the risk of complications during pregnancy. So let's look at acute versus chronic stress responses. So stress can be classified into two categories. One is acute and another is chronic stress. So acute stress is short-term and typically resolves quickly, while chronic stress is long-lasting and it persists over an extended period. So acute stress response, which is acute stress, triggers a temporary immune response and enhances the immune function to prepare the body for potential stress. This can result in a short-term boost in immune activity, while chronic stress, on the other hand, leads to dysregulation of the immune system, and prolonged exposure to stress hormones can suppress immune function, making people and women more susceptible to infection and impairing the body's ability to mount an effective immune response. Now, looking at the immunological changes during stress. So stress exerts various effects on the immune system, including alteration in the production and the activity of immune cells and immune molecules. And further, what it does is it causes inflammation and cytokines. So stress can induce inflammation and disrupt the balance of cytokines, which are important signaling molecules involving in the immune response. And excessive inflammation or excessive imbalance in the cytokine levels can contribute to pregnancy complications like preterm labor and preeclampsia. Now, further stress can cause stress can be a natural cause increase in the natural killer cells. So chronic stress may affect the activity of natural killer cells, which are a type of immune cells responsible for eliminating infected or abnormal cells from our body. And altered natural killer cells function can impact the immune surveillance as well as increase the risk of pregnancy complication. Now looking at the impaired immune function. So stress-induced immune system dysfunction can have significant implications for pregnancy outcomes as well as maternal health. Now, further, it can increase the infection and its susceptibility. So impaired immune function during stress can increase the risk of infection, including urinary tract infection, especially for the pregnant mothers, and infect their respiratory infections also. And infections during pregnancy can lead to further complications like premature rupture of membranes as well as preterm birth. Now, looking at the autoimmune disorders. So stress has been associated with exaggerated of autoimmune disorders. For pregnant mothers with pre-existing autoimmune conditions, stress-induced immune dysregulation can worsen their symptoms and increase the risk of adverse pregnancy outcome. Now, it also impacts the fetal maternal tolerance. So during pregnancy, the immune system must strike a delicate balance to tolerate the fetus while still protecting against potential threats. So stress-induced immune dysregulation can disrupt this balance, leading to increased risk of pregnancy loss or complications. So now let's look at the stress impact on nervous system function. So the nervous system plays a very vital role during pregnancy. coordinating various bodily functions and supporting the development of the baby. And it facilitates communication between the mother as well as the baby and ensures a proper growth and development of the baby. However, stress can disrupt the functioning of the nervous system, leading to adverse effects. Chronic stress during pregnancy can negatively impact the developing baby's brain development, as well as might increase the risk of behavioral as well as cognitive issues in later in life for the baby. So the first reaction that happens is sympathetic nervous system activation. So stress triggers the activation of the sympathetic nervous system, which is commonly known as the fight or flight response. And this response prepares the body to react to perceived threats. Second, what it does is it causes physiological response in a manner that sympathetic nervous system activates during the stress responses can lead to increased heart rate, and elevated blood pressure further happens due to the increased heart rate, and the release of stress hormones like adrenal and noradrenal begins from there. All of this can lead to further pregnancy complications. So prolonged or excessive sympathetic nervous system activation during pregnancy increases the risk of complications like preeclampsia, gestational hypertension, preterm labor, etc. What it further does is altered brain function. So stress can have a very profound effect on brain function, particularly in areas responsible for emotions and decision making, as well as stress regulation. So there comes the role of HPA, which is hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, which we discussed earlier. So chronic stress can dysregulate the HPA axis, which further leads to abnormal cortisol levels. And this dysregulation can affect the brain's stress response, contributing to anxiety, depression, and other mood disorder. So it's a feedback loop, it's a cycle. So higher stress levels impacts the HPA, and then further HPA increases the stress level more. Further impact is on the limbic system. So the limbic system involved in emotions and the memory can be adversely affected by stress also. And this can lead to emotional instability, mood swings, and difficulty in regulating emotional responses. Now, there's also an impact on the cognitive ability. So stress during pregnancy influences cognitive ability, including memory, attention, and also executive function. Further, it also impacts the high level of stress hormones can impair the memory consolidation and retrieval also, and affecting both short-term and long-term memories in the mothers. And this can impact the learning abilities for the baby during and after pregnancy. Further, there can be effect on the attention and concentration. So stress can disrupt attention and concentration, making it challenging to focus on tasks and retain information. And this can impact daily activities and cognitive performance of the mother. It can also impact in the executive functions like decision making, problem solving, planning, and all of this can be compromised under high level of stress. And this further affects the ability to make informed choices regarding the prenatal care and important decisions of life for the mothers. Now, coming on to the complications in digestions due to stress. So the digestive system holds immense importance during pregnancy, as it's responsible for processing and absorbing nutrients necessary for the well-being of both mom and the baby. So proper functioning of digestive system ensures optimal nutrient uptake and supports the baby's development. However, stress disrupts the normal functioning of the digestive system. So increased stress levels during pregnancy leads to digestive issues like indigestion, bloating, changes in the bowel movement. And further, there is reduced digestive secretion. So stress can interfere with the production of digestive secretions and affecting the breakdowns and absorption of nutrients. It can further cause issues like gastric acid production, wherein stress reduces the production of gastric acid, impairing the digestion of proteins and increasing the risk of malabsorption. An inadequate breakdown of food can lead to nutrient deficiencies and hinder the baby's development in turn. Now, further it affects is enzyme secretion. So stress can also affect the secretion of digestive enzymes such as pancreatic enzymes and bile, which are essential for the breakdown of carbohydrates, fats, and proteins. And insufficient enzyme production leads to digestive discomfort and nutrient malabsorption. So, constrictive blood vessels in the digestive tracts can also occur due to presence of stress. So stress-induced vasoconstriction, which we discussed earlier, impacts the blood flow to the digestive system, which affects its overall function. Then further, blood flow redistribution occurs. So what stress does is that it redirects the blood flow to the essential organs and muscles, and then it limits the blood supply to the digestive system. Then reduced blood flow can lead to decreased nutrient absorption and slower the gastrointestinal motility, and then as a result there is a slowed digestive processes. So inadequate blood flow to the digestive tract results in reduced muscle contraction and slower movement of food through the gastrointestinal tract. And this further leads to the symptoms of indigestion, bloating, and constipation. Now, let's look at gastrointestinal disorders. So stress is known to contribute to the development and increase of various gastrointestinal disorders. Number one would be quite known is irritable bowel syndrome, which is IBS. So stress is closely linked to the onset and worsening of the symptoms in individuals with IBS. So pregnant women with IBS may experience increased bowel sensitivity, abdominal pain, as well as changes in the bowel habits. The next common is GERD, which is gastroesophageal reflux disease. And stress can trigger the worsen the symptoms of GERD, including heartburn and acid reflux. And these symptoms can particularly be problematic during pregnancy when the growing uterus is already putting a lot of pressure on the digestive system. Inflammatory bowel disease is another complication wherein the chronic stress has been associated with increased disease activity and flare-ups in people with IBD. So pregnant women with IBD may require careful management to minimize the complication and ensure proper fetal development. Now, let's look at the respiratory implication of stress during pregnancy. So respiratory function is the utmost important function during pregnancy, as it ensures sufficient oxygen supply for both mother and the baby. So it plays a very crucial role in supporting a healthy growth and development for both the mother and the baby. However, stress can have a lot of implications for the respiratory function during pregnancy. Heightened stress level can result in shallow breathing and reduced lung capacity, and it can further affect the oxygen exchange. So, how it occurs? First is bronchodilation. So, stress triggers physiological responses that can result in bronchodilation. The relaxation and widening of the airway passages in the lungs occurs, and this is what triggers this process. Then further, sympathetic nervous system activation occurs. So stress activates the sympathetic nervous system, leading to the release of stress hormones like adrenal and noradrenal. These hormones cause the smooth muscles surrounding the airways to relax, resulting in bronchodilation, and increased airflow occurs. So bronchodilation allows for increased airflow to the lung, ensuring the adequate supply of the oxygen. So while bronchodilation is a normal response to the stress, excessive or prolonged bronchodilation can be problematic during pregnancy because it can lead to complications like increased respiratory rate. So stress can also lead to increased respiratory rate in a manner the number of breaths taken per minute can increase. It can further lead to hyperventilation. During periods of stress, the body may enter into a state of hyperventilation, which is characterized by rapid and shallow breathing. So this increased respiratory rate is a response to a body's perceived need for more oxygen, which may or may not be real, but since the body perceives stress as threat, and hence there are all kind of physiological responses, and as a result, the increased respiratory rate is there. Now, impact on oxygen-carbon dioxide balance. So hyperventilation caused by stress can disrupt the balance between oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body. So excessive elimination of carbon dioxide can lead to respiratory alkalosis, a condition which is characterized by abnormal increase in blood pH levels. And this can have implications for maternal and baby's health during pregnancy. Now, stress can be linked to the development and increase of various respiratory conditions which can pose complications during pregnancy. First is asthma. So stress can trigger or worsen asthma symptoms in pregnant women with pre-existing asthma. So the physiological responses to stress like bronchodilation and increased respiratory rate can lead to airway constriction and breathing difficulties. Further, it can lead to respiratory infections. So stress-induced immune system changes can increase the susceptibility to increased respiratory infections like cold and influenza. And these infections can pose the risk to both mom and the baby. Now, gestational hyperventilation syndrome. So some pregnant women may experience gestational hyperventilation syndrome, which is characterized by excessive respiratory rate and hyperventilation. So stress can contribute to the development or increase of this syndrome, leading to respiratory alkalosis and related symptoms. Now let's look at the strain on the musculoskeletal functioning of stress. So stress can exert a significant amount of impact on the musculoskeletal system of the body, which will affect its functioning and potentially lead to complications during pregnancy. So the musculoskeletal system, which comprises of bones, muscles, tendons, and ligaments, plays a very vital role in providing the support, mobility, and stability to the mother's body. So what stress does is the first symptom is muscle tension and tightness. So stress causes increased muscle tension and tightness throughout the body, which leads to discomfort and potential pregnancy complication. Then further, it triggers more stress response. So when under stress, the body releases stress hormones like cortisol, which can result in increased muscle activity and tension, and then further have impact on the pregnancy. So persisting muscle tension and tightness during pregnancy leads to discomfort, back pain, and difficulty in maintaining proper posture. This further affects the overall well-being of the mother and also potentially can harm the baby in various manners. It also impacts the motor skill and coordination function in the mother. So stress affects the motor skills and coordination potentially impairing the movement and the daily activities in a lot of moms. Now, motor function. So chronic stress disrupts the motor function and coordination, making simple tasks more challenging for the mothers. And this can affect the ability to perform activities of daily living and potentially increasing the risk of accidents and injuries for the mothers. It also affects the balance and stability. So increased muscle tension and reduced coordination can impact the balance and stability, which will increase the risk of falls and also musculoskeletal injuries during the pregnancy. Stress can also lead to musculoskeletal disorders, and it has been associated with development as well as increase in the musculoskeletal disorders. So disorders like lower back pain. So stress-induced muscle tension and poor posture can contribute to the development of lower back pain during pregnancy. And this can lead to discomfort and difficulty in performing daily activities in turn. Another disorder is called TMJ, which is temporomandibular joint disorder, and stress-related jaw clenching and teeth grinding can contribute to TMJ disorder, which is characterized by jaw paining or clicking and limited mouth opening. Now, TMJ disorder can cause discomfort and affect the eating and speaking of mothers and affect the overall well-being of both mother and baby further. Fibromyalgia, which is stress triggered. So stress can trigger or worsen the symptoms of fibromyalgia. This is a condition characterized by widespread musculoskeletal pain, fatigue, and sleep disturbances. So managing stress is really crucial for people with fibromyalgia, especially during pregnancy, to elevate the symptoms and improve the quality of life. So the impact of stress on various symptoms of the body during pregnancy is really significant and can lead to range of complication and adverse outcomes. Stress triggers a cascade of physiological responses, including activation of stress response system, hormonal imbalance, immune dysfunction, and alteration in various organ systems. And these effects can have far-reaching consequences for maternal health, fetal development, and pregnancy outcomes. So understanding the physiological impact of stress on these systems during pregnancy is really crucial for us as teachers and mentors and guide for the expectant mothers, and so that we can create effective stress management strategies like relaxation techniques, and we create a stress management plan for mothers. Even when there are days when they're not coming to yoga, they continue to do their yoga practices, pranayamas, or they seek out professional help to deal with their stress, and also create some self-care system where they can mitigate any adverse effect of stress. And by prioritizing stress reduction and adopting a very holistic approach to prenatal care, mothers can really optimize their health and also the health of the baby, and it will directly impact the positive pregnancy outcome. So with that, I hope this was helpful and contributed to you, and you will continue to support mother in their stress management, and it contributed to your understanding of how crucial it is to manage the stress and how multifold impact stress can have on the mother's and the baby's health and well-being, not just during pregnancy, but it can continue after the pregnancy. So I really hope this contributed to you, and you are going to further serve the mothers well by your deeper understanding on the role of stress during and after pregnancy. With that, thank you and namaste.